So it's early February right now. It's the time of year when we start to think about spring. We start to plan what the garden is going to be like. And when we think about spring, the first thing I usually think about is tapping birch trees. There are a number of different ways you can tap them, but they're all very, very similar. So when we go to tap trees this coming spring, it'll be a lot like we did last spring. You want to select bigger, healthier trees, though you can sometimes tap younger ones. The right time of year for us is usually, April, maybe even late March, depending on it. You know that it's the right time of year when it gets warm in the daytime, maybe a high of about 40 degrees or low 40s, something like that. But it still gets below freezing at nighttime. So, temperature swings from like the upper 20s to the lower 40s. But as long as it's still freezing at night and then kind of above freezing in the daytime, that's when the sap really starts to flow. Once you select your tree and the height you're going to drill your hole, you want to choose your drill bit so that it is roughly the same size as the tap you're going to use, maybe a tiny bit smaller. You want to drill a hole into the tree at a comfortable height. Kind of depends on which tap you're going to use. Like if I'm going to use a tap that's like this, I'm going to drill to where the bottom of this hose is probably going to be down close to ground level, so I can just set the receptacle on the ground. If I'm going to use a tap like this, where I have a little hook to hang my receptacle, that's going to be more like, arm height kind of thing. If I'm going to use just a little piece of tubing, then that can be pretty much at any height because I'm going to have to tie it around the tree or set it on the ground or something. But there are a lot of different ways of getting sap out of the tree. So you drill at a slight upward angle so that the sap is going to flow down the hole out of the tree. So you want to go kind of upward and only about an inch, maybe inch and a half deep. So if you look at the tap, like this is the spout part where it comes out, but that's only about like an inch and a half there, maybe inch and a quarter, and that's about as far as you're going to want to go into the tree. Pretty similar to like this tap. You're only going to be going in like, 2/3 of that. So a little over an inch maybe at the most, depending on the size of the tree. If it's a smaller tree, you can go a little bit less deep. So you drill up and in. I like to keep the drill moving as I pull it out of the tree to pull a lot of that pulp out with it to kind of clear out the hole. And then you place your tap into the hole and you're going to kind of gently tap it into the tree. And without much delay, if it is the right time of year, it's going to start flowing. You're going to be collecting the sap in a number of receptacles, depending on the kind you use. A lot of people use classy buckets. We just kind of try to recycle whatever we got laying around. But inevitably, you're going to be collecting some extra stuff. So what we like to do then is, as we are collecting it from the smaller receptacles and putting it into bigger ones, we filter it. And so you'll see in this clip, we are pouring the sap through our goat milk strainer. We use little goat milk filters to filter out any insects or bits of moss or sawdust or whatever might be getting into the container. So once we've filtered it, we can just drink it as it is, and we do that. But if you don't do something with it within a couple of days, it starts to get a little bit wonky. So to boil it down, we started by having a big old cauldron. What people do when they do birch sap commercially is they'd have kind of bigger, flatter pans with a lot more surface area. You can boil it out faster, the same way you would with maple sap. But we don't really have that at the moment, so we just use kind of a big cauldron, the biggest thing we can find, so we can boil it down to a level that we can then bring into the house and continue boiling. So after we boil it outside, we might want to filter it again as we bring it inside, because again, insects might have landed in it, things like that. We want to filter out anything, and the filtering is not going to harm its food value. So we filter it again, and then we boil it down until it is syrup consistency. You can tell when you stir it if it's syrup consistency or not. And you can also take little tastes. It's not going to taste like maple syrup. It's going to taste like birch syrup. It's a different taste, and it might take a little getting used to. I like it a lot personally, but it's just something that is different. Something else, if you don't want to boil it all the way down into syrup, which takes a long time and a lot of fuel, whether you're burning wood or propane or whatever, as you can boil it less and then maybe add a little bit of sugar. As you boil it and the water leaves it, the concentration of sugar grows. Depending on how concentrated this sugar is, you might need to add a little bit more, or you might not to, but you can add some yeast, and then that yeast will turn the sugar into alcohol, right? So then what you do is you bottle it the way you would any other kind of beer. So for ours, we did a couple of different 5-gallon batches, one with just standard bread yeast and the other one with a legitimate ale yeast. They both turned out pretty good, but we kind of let it ferment by the fire for a while. You're going to need a hygrometer to test the percentage of alcohol that it is. Then you're going to put it into bottles the same way you would if you were brewing beer. And so that's just another way of preserving your birch sap harvest. So whatever you choose to do with birch sap, there are a number of ways of using the food value of this very first resource of the spring. You can drink it straight, you can turn it into syrup, you can turn it into wine and or beer, but there are a number of ways of using it. And if you live in a place like where we live, where there are tons of birch trees, it's something that you don't want to go to waste. And it's also something that happens at a time of year when you're not doing a lot of other subsistence type activities. So it's really easy to get excited about it, to get into it. And it's also super cool because you get so much of it so easily. And it feels like you're really doing something, because just like nature's abundance, right?